Welcome to the Jericho Force podcast, where we learn how to integrate faith into the work that we do. Don't conform to the world's way of doing business, transformed by doing business God's way. Here's our host, my husband, author, speaker, teacher, encourager, and stewardship coach, Jason Davis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your host, Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortify, and welcome to the Jericho Force podcast, where we learn how to integrate faith into the work that we do and live out our faith in the marketplace. I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we've got another exciting guest this week. She is a powerful woman of God. I've worked with her and partnered with her in some other capacities, but you haven't seen her like this on our podcast. But before I bring her on, let me introduce her to you. Yahanna Diemer. As founder and CEO of Journey to the Kingdom, Yahanna pushes the business forward with the goal of helping women find which season they are in with God as they journey to the kingdom. We're going to hear more about that in a little bit, but ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jericho Force podcast, Miss Yahanna Diemer. Yahanna, what is going on?
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited to just talk and let's get going.
Indeed. Well, Yahanna, we will get right to it. And I know that we had to, do a little bit of rescheduling and whatnot. That's just the nature of life. But I've been excited to have you on for a while because I've watched your journey over the last really year and a half, and it's been really encouraging, inspiring, and exciting. But Yahanna, as you're in this new season with the business God is calling you to, talk to us about your professional background, because we know that where you're at now is not where you've always been. So talk to us a little bit about your background.
Got it. Yeah, I think that is pretty funny because a lot of people, they never understand that where God had you previously, most of the time it lines up with where he's going to take you. Right? So my professional background, actually, God had me lead corporate. I started in the community, so my background is in community health, public health. So I have a bachelor's degree in community health, a master's degree in public health. So that's where the community, the group, and the hubs that people coming together on this journey comes from. It was all God from the beginning. I may not have been saved, but it was God orchestrating it for what he needed right now in the kingdom. So I have my background is in public health, community health. And from there, I started a nonprofit organization where I basically learned the skills that I need in Journey to the Kingdom. I did everything. It was just a 2-person department, me and the director. And from there, I learned about budgeting. I learned about a supervision. I learned about how to organize, how to prioritize everything. Every skill that I use now, I learned in that position. But I reached a point where I was like, I feel like there's more. There's more that I should be doing. And I had a recruiter reach out to me on LinkedIn, and they're like, do you want to work this position as a community health outreach worker? And months had gone by, 2. And they were like, still hadn't filled the position. But I finally went on. They brought me on. And I worked my way up through this as a community health worker in this corporate position. And I had 4 promotions in 4 years. And I just kept working and building it up. I went from the lowest position at the company, community health outreach worker, to a community care coordinator, to a supervisor or care coordination team lead, to manager of care coordination in 4 years. And it has just been growth after growth. I went from training people individually to leading teams, to leading regions. And that's how God uses me now. I am basically doing exactly what I did there, but just in the kingdom.
That is powerful. Yahanna, as you were speaking, I was just doing a little mind map. So we have the community aspect you were responsible for and became skilled at managing community, even within a different domain. And sometimes, Yahanna, I find that people, the domain distracts us from the actual skill sets that are being learned. So we go, oh, well, that was healthcare and that's over there. And it's like, no. There's management and leadership and budgeting. Those are things that apply across the board. So what would you say to those kingdom business owners out there to kind of help them not worry about the domain or compartmentalize? And like you said, oftentimes what God is calling you into, many of where you're at or where you've been, those experiences are leveraged for the future. So talk to the audience about how you looked at it with that lens, and like, what, this isn't just about, I'm in healthcare. Where I'm at now, I use a lot of that. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, that part is so important. Nothing is wasted. I really look at it that way, that nothing is wasted. And so for me, while I was working in corporate, I wasn't saved just yet. I mean, God raised me up in 3 years. God called me in 2019. So everything that I've been is really at an accelerated pace. I really want to put that part out because I didn't know. I learned everything in a very short amount of time. And so in that, as God started to call me, I started to look back and I started to want to know my purpose. So as I was trying to work and discover my purpose, I'm like, what do I like to do? What have I done in the past? These are some questions. If someone's trying to figure out how it lines up, what is it that you enjoy? What is something that grinds your gears? What is like, I don't like to see people alone. I don't like, because it's something that I struggle with growing up, like being alone and not having community and not having people, isolation. That's something that's near and dear to my heart. That's something that grinds my gears. That's something that I don't want people to deal with. So for me, when I was in healthcare, it was more so, I have always been remote. Like my healthcare career was a remote before the pandemic. So it was always about, I was a remote leader since 2015. So it was always about what can I do and again, nothing is wasted. God knew that I would need to lead remote teams. So let me put you over here because you're going to need the skill. So it's really just about knowing your skill sets. What is it that you're great at? What is it that you're good at? What is it that if you were to look around at other people, what is it that you excel at? And so for me, it was like, I would be able to do things that may have been difficult for other people when it came to leadership and prioritization, organization. It was something that a lot of people were like, how do you do this? Mm-hmm. And I think that when people get to that point where you start to see where you stand out, even if it's not major, but what is it that you like and that you are great at or you stand out? More than likely, that's the thing that God will use for his good, not for his good, but I mean, he can use it in any kind of way. Mm-hmm. But if I'm in healthcare and he's like, now I want you to come over here and use these skills, he's going to use that thing more like that you already worked on. So I look at it that way. For me, it was really just looking at how it intertwines. I know God called me out of my workplace, but I also knew I was skilled. Like I could use those skills in other places. So it's just really about what is it that you are great at, good at, and what you excel in.
That's good, Yahanna. Understanding purpose, looking at skill sets, adaptability is kind of a underlining thing I heard in what you're saying as well. And Yahanna, we kind of see this interesting balance between corporate and entrepreneurship nowadays. They talked about the great resignation and things like that, but skill sets are even more on display now because you have this unique time in the marketplace where a lot of people are starting businesses, but kind of like your experience, maybe they're not realizing, hey, that thing I used to do 3 years ago, I didn't just pack it up and put it in the closet. Like that still applies as an entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah. And I think that people forget that part. Honestly, for me, I believe the reason I was able to learn so quickly is because I was able to see it younger. I think that when we look at it as skills, and sometimes even in the kingdom-minded people, when it's so spiritual, sometimes people are so spiritual when you're so in the spirit that you can't see. You don't see, like, I'm an advocate of having balance. Like, I can go in the spirit, but I'm also in the natural. I can look around and I'm not so high up that I can't see that I can use this, or that I can still be who it is that God has called me to be, that the way that I am is how he needs me to be in the kingdom, not to just flip and change. So I think that sometimes when we talk about from corporate to the kingdom, well, there we go, from corporate to the kingdom, it's really just about looking at it. And for me, even for those who may still be in corporate, there's training programs. Like corporate offers training and development. I took every course that I could. I would do trainings. I would do development. It was available. And I think I was always looking to how can I sharpen myself? How can I sharpen my skills? What can I do to sharpen myself? And before Christ, when you get into the word, iron sharpens iron. I just wanted to sharpen everything that I knew was something that I was good at. So I think if we look at it that way and sharpen it, then that's when God is like, oh, now I can really use that. Because it's up to us to sharpen our skills. It's up to us to develop and cultivate our gifts and talents. So I really look at it that way. I've always been open to sharpening and developing my talents and gifts.
That's good, Yahanna. You said one of my favorite scriptures, iron sharpens iron.
So true.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking, Yahanna, you said something critical. Sometimes when we get in the spirit, we get so caught up in the atmosphere that we lose the practicality of things. So for you, how did the Holy Spirit help you kind of stay grounded and understand that, hey, this is one integrated life? Like God is with you in the boardroom just like he's with you, in the bathroom, right? Okay. So how did you stay grounded and not allow yourself to kind of, stay super spiritual and not forget about the practicality or being pragmatic with what's the reality that I see in front of me, knowing that I still have to show my faith by my works?
That's really good. And so for me, eventually I become gave my life to Christ and got baptized while I was still in corporate. And in that, I started to see that I would just know things, like I'm moving and I'm in corporate. I'm not, and I feel like this is what set me up, because initially I'm in corporate and things are happening in my department and I'm going to the director like, this is about to happen. I see these trends. This is not looking good. You should probably change it. And I became like a right-hand man because God has given me the insight in corporate. And I'm here and I'm just excelling and taking off and nobody knows what's going on. She's like, are you psychic? I said, no. And I was like, but I don't have to be overt with it. Like, it's not that I have to be like, the Lord told me that we are about to have a crash. Like, no, I don't need to be overt. Yeah. I know what I know. And God is showing me and giving me insight and wisdom in these situations in the department. And I really feel there may be people who are still in corporate, but it's not that you have to go up with your badge and like, hello. And in your workforce, yes, if Holy Spirit is leading you to do that, that's fine. But he wants us to be everywhere. When we talk about the mountains, like he wants us in corporate, he wants us in church, he wants us in music, he wants us in arts and all of it. And I think that when we get to the point where we understand, like I don't feel like I need to walk around with my badge on saying prophet or Christian or believer. I don't need that. Mm-hmm. I just need to be me. And that's where you become a light. People are drawn to you when they see the God in you and they know something's different with this person. What is it? And then they want to know. And then you tell them. Yeah. That's how it works.
And that's I love that part at the end, Yahanna. That's basically the scripture. Let your light shine so before men that they might see your good works and come and glorify your Father in heaven. That's what you said. It's like, hey, I'm doing good things. I have insight. I have wisdom. And people, man, how does Yahanna, what is that? And then they come, and you know how it is, Yahanna, they pull you aside and they just, how do you? And then it's a perfect invitation.
Let me tell you about my God. Let me tell you.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Well, Yahanna, you kind of already started to allude to this, but I don't know a kingdom business owner out there where their personal testimony hasn't played a role in where they are today. So talk to us about your story, your testimony, where Christ just became central in your life.
Yeah, I have a bit of a crazy testimony, I'll tell you that. My testimony, and I don't want to go too long because, I mean, we're going to round it up because I can talk all day about my testimony. But basically, if we were to sum it up, I grew up in a church, religious household, religious background, and memorizing scripture. That's why God doesn't allow me to memorize scripture now, because he wants people to know you don't need to memorize scripture to be used by God. Memorizing scripture and just all of these things that just, it was ticking the box. I went to church. I memorized these scriptures. You know, how it is when it's a religious mindset and religious background. And it wasn't about relationship with God. It was more like religion. And so I grew up like this. And when I was old enough, I ran from the church. 17. I didn't want anything to do with church. Didn't want anything to do with God. Renounced, basically. I wanted nothing to do with it because I had to, it was basically shoved down my throat. And I got into the world, making bad decisions, you know, and then it was as if I didn't know it was spiritual warfare. But I started to have just this feeling of just being drained and exhausted and just worn down. I had debilitating anxiety. I had terrible depression. I'm talking, all I can do is go to work. I'm a high performer. You look on the outside and I'm crushing it at work. You look on the outside and it's like, look, my computer said, yeah. You look on the outside and I'm crushing it at work and you believe like, man, there's something wrong with her. And I am just broken on the inside from the hurt and the trauma and the pain and everything that happened in my past. Basically, for me, I had anxiety from childhood and didn't even know it. And I would tell my parents, something's wrong with me. I don't know what it is. And they're like, nothing's wrong with you. Rounded it up, I had addiction to weed, to drinking, to smoking, just, you know, just trying to find peace. I wanted peace of mind. There was this turmoil. My soul was just tormented. And it was tormented because the enemy knew what would happen if I found out my true identity. And so he knew if she finds out, it's over, game over. And so I was tormented my whole life, like just everything, fear. I was scared to cross the street. It was bad. And I reached a point where it was just like, Lord, I got into New Age, psychics, all of these things because I was just searching and I was looking for something. I had all the things. I'm in corporate. I make 6 figures. I'm making all this money and the car, the house, the money, the this, the that, but I'm still empty inside. Empty. I'm not fulfilled with the things. What is it? I don't understand. So I cried out to God one day. I used to go and just say, Lord, I just don't know what to do. Cried out. And eventually he supernaturally healed me from anxiety and depression overnight. I woke up the next morning. It was completely gone. Went through inner healing and deliverance. And from there, I was just on fire for God just because of I knew that God was real because of what I had gone through for so many years and just high performing and just everything that I was able to do. I had to work 10 times harder to be able to keep doing it at that capacity just because of what was going on internally with me. And I knew God was real because there was no way that I just woke up and it was just gone. And from there, I've been on fire for God, just bringing people into the kingdom and living the life that I live now.
Whew, my God, Yahanna, I got chills listening to that. And I know there's more.
The summary, look.
Right. I know that was the Spark Notes edition.
The Spark Notes. That's the footnotes.
Yeah, the footnotes. I would say shout out to those of you who even remember the term Spark Notes for telling what era we're from, saying that back in high school and college. But Yahanna, just everything that you said, just, you know, you came to the end of yourself and you were just searching, you know, just self-medicating, just trying to come out of it. And I love just the transparency, number one, and then you said just God is a healer. And Yahanna, many have been through so much these last 2.5 years, and that's why I love hearing testimonies like yours, because it's like God is He's still a healer. He always has been. And it's not just those physical ailments, but the mental health is such a hot button right now. So he heals, you know, mental, psychological, emotional, all of that. So talk to us, you know, if you're open. When you were going through that, like you said, you woke up and God just healed you of that. How were you able to encourage other people who, maybe for them, because we know God can do the miracle however he wants to, whenever he wants to, because God controls the outcome, humans don't. But how are you able to encourage people now, having gone through that experience with mental, psychological, emotional trauma?
Yeah, so for me, I was just in distress for just so many years. And I believe telling my testimony, letting people know, because people see me now and they're just like, I laugh, I joke. And, God is a God of restoration. We forget sometimes. But I think remembering the testimony and going back and letting people know that if God can do it for me, he can do it for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that in this space where God has called me to other people who deal with it, like Journey to the Kingdom, 80% of the women who are called to Journey to the Kingdom, we have that turmoil, we have that warfare, we have that mental health factor where it's Jesus and therapy. You may hear my son, he has his game. It's Jesus and therapy where sometimes we need Jesus to come and heal us, but sometimes we need therapy as well. And I went to therapy for 2, maybe 3 years before I was saved, because I had never had anyone to talk to. I had never had anyone to just release anything to. And I think that sometimes when we go through trauma and pain and hurt at a young age, it's really difficult because you don't trust people. You don't trust, you don't want to open up, you don't want to be vulnerable, basically shut everything down. I was numb for years, numb. I went maybe 5 years without crying, years without crying. And people used to call me Osa, but I was just numb because of so much hurt and pain. And I think that when we talk about mental health, it's a combination of getting help, like really saying, I knew something was wrong. And, growing up in an African-American household, at that time, mental health, but I knew. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we just need to go and get the help that we need, whether it's a therapist, a psychologist, medicine is here, medication is here to help those who need it. I never took it, but some people may need that as well. So it's a balance. I'm a firm advocate of Jesus and therapy, because I think that what is uncovered in therapy, you can take that back to Jesus in prayer. And then as you are unraveling it with an actual individual, he's coming in and he's healing you from that hurt and that trauma that's being uncovered in the process of therapy. So yeah, I'm called to a lot of women, and most of the women, 80%, they've gone through what I've gone through, and God really leads them to me. So when I speak, they understand.
That's good. Yahanna, you as you were talking, you reminded me of the scripture, they lay hands on the sick and they shall recover. And a lot of times we think of recovery as a one-time experience, and recovery is a process. So some people, they get the miracle right on the spot, and that's it. And then there's other people where it's literally day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, and then they're healed. So I appreciate you sharing what you shared, because it just gives that full perspective about each person. They walk their own journey with God as they become healed, because it's not a matter of if, it's just when, because he's the one who comes alongside of us. He's still Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. So see, Yahanna, you're starting to get me excited now.
He said, look, it's time to preach this thing.
Yeah. And you gave perfect segue, like in basketball, alley-oop. We've been talking around it, trying to set it up, but let's go ahead and get to it. We've heard Journey to the Kingdom a few times now, but Yahanna, talk to us about what Journey to the Kingdom is, this wonderful community that God has given you. Tell us what it is, what led you to starting it, and how do you work with people?
Yeah, Journey to the Kingdom that's my baby. My baby is about to be 3 years old now. And it really just started. It's everything that I needed. Journey to the Kingdom is, from my testimony, it's everything that I needed. And the way that it started is God accelerated me very quickly, like I said, like I mentioned. So I went from giving my life to Christ in September of 2019. By December of 2019, I knew my purpose. I knew why God created me. I knew He had already shown me. I went through the wilderness, and I was so focused and on fire that it was like nothing. I've lived this life of hurt and pain for so long, but the only thing I can do is live for God. Like, what am I going back to? Like, there are no other options. Like in the Bible, it says, where am I going to go? I don't know, like, where? So it was really just focused on Him. So by December, I knew my purpose of 2019. By March, God told me to start a Facebook group. This was before the pandemic hit. And early March, late February, He started to speak to me and tell me, start a Facebook group. You learned how to build your relationship with me. I knew nothing about a relationship with God. I saw a post one day that said, it's not about relationship. I mean, religion is about relationship with God. And I knew nothing about it. I had never heard, I grew up in church for years until I was 17. And no one ever mentioned relationship with God. And so when I read that post, I was like, relationship with God. So that's what I went seeking. What is this relationship with God? So I would test things out like a science project. Like, hold on, when I did this, I heard God. When I did this, when I listened to this worship music, again, I didn't have anyone to show me and speak this to me. When I listened to this worship music, and then I prayed and I read the word and I heard this clearly. So it was like a science project as I was growing in my relationship with God. And in this, I started to hear God clearly. And I started to just really step into it. And then He told me, start the Facebook group. And I'm like, Facebook group? He's like, you learned how to build your relationship with me. Now I need you to teach women how to build their relationship.
Wow.
Before the pandemic hit, February. So I go start the Facebook group. And some ladies come in. Boom, the pandemic hits. And people needed refuge. They needed a place to go. They needed peace. They needed. You know, it was scary times and people were afraid. And so I would come on like, anybody want to learn how to build a relationship with God? If you're looking for peace in the pandemic, I have my billboard up, like, come over here. You looking for peace? Come over here. So I had already built it. I had already started the process with the Facebook group, and the ladies came, and I started to grow in my gifts, and I started to pray and intercede for them, and I started to see visions. Again, I knew nothing about fivefold at all. So I started to see visions, and I'm growing in my gifts, and I'm seeing people real time. Like, but I see you doing this, and they're like, I'm at a window right now. Okay. And so I started to grow in my gifts because I started to pray and intercede, and then God started to speak to me like, you're prophetic, you're this, you're an apostolic, you're apostolic, you're this. And I started, again, no information about any of this. I knew nothing about it. So I step into it, leads me to launch it. It grows, it tips over into international, like people in Africa. We just met someone who's in the Philippines, and it just started to grow and grow and grow all over. And so now that's where we are right now. I'm going to pause it right there, but that's how it started. And I don't know if you had a question, but yeah, so let's stop there.
Man, Yahanna, that's powerful. Just I think about just the father-daughter relationship. Like you said, it wasn't like, somebody took you aside. All right, Yahanna, this is, we're going to do this and get trained up and all these. It was just you and the Father, and his love for you, his care for you, and you learned a relationship for yourself. And then God calling you to, hey, I want you to go talk to other women, show other women how to do this. And that's just powerful. I've heard the same quote in different capacities, just relationship, not religion or rules, just relationship. And I echo that sentiment, Yahanna, because it's just so many people don't come to the faith or fall away from the faith because it's so much about religion and rules. And Jesus is always ever, the motivation was always ever love. So this is great and powerful work that you're doing for your community, for sure. So Yahanna, when women come into your group, when they come to Journey to the Kingdom, is there like a blueprint that you use? Because I would imagine you meet people in many different phases of their life, right? Not just where they are in their career with their family, but even spiritually and mentally. I'm sure you've seen a lot. So talk to us about the process that you walk women through when they come to Journey to the Kingdom.
Yeah, and you know what? Recently, God has been stretching at me to tell me that it's not just women, because he uses me more apostolic on Clubhouse, where it's really being built up as an apostolic prophetic church, and more men are coming. They're showing up a lot more and growing in their walk. So for me, God began to show me that he said, you are the blueprint. When it comes to this journey, when it comes to this walk, many of us, we are the blueprint. When we talk about trailblazers, we talk about pioneers, we talk about people who are on the forefront. You are the blueprint for someone. What God has given you, what he spoke to you, what he has you creating, building, it's the blueprint that people will follow. They literally will follow that map. They will follow that route. And you're going to help people accelerate. What may have taken me 3 years could take someone 1 year as the blueprint. And so he began to speak to me and say, you are the blueprint for what the journey looks like, the walk, the ups, the downs, the long suffering, everything that people don't want to talk about. Everybody wants to talk about the blessings. People don't want to talk about the long suffering. People don't want to talk about the warfare. People don't want to talk about what it is to, blessings for obedience, but everybody want to receive what people are speaking prophetically. But we also need to talk about what else comes with this walk and this journey. And so for me, he gave me the blueprint of what the journey to the kingdom looks like. The journey of this, people call it our walk with God, but it's the name that he gave me is Journey to the Kingdom. And what he began to show me is that when he first calls you, there's a pruning season. He starts to prune away the addictions. He starts to prune away the people. He starts to prune away all of the things that can't go with you where he's taking you. And then you step into the wilderness season where it gets scary and you're just like, why am I going through all of this? Why is my world upside down? Why did I lose my job? Why do I need to leave my marriage or my relationships? Why is all this happening to me? But usually in the wilderness, he's developing your gifts and your talents and showing you who you really are. And then you come out of the wilderness and it's like the crossover season that he showed me. Crossover season is when you know your purpose, you know your calling, you know your assignment, you know why you have to go through it. To an extent, you get it, you understand. And then you want, if it's your time, you start to step into what God is leading you to do. And then there's the birthing season where you begin to give birth to what God has placed inside of you, that book, the ministry, the business, the podcast, the YouTube channel, whatever it is God has placed inside of you. In that birthing season, you start to birth it. And that's a whole nother season that I maybe when they're trying to give birth and there's complications. So he uses me to help people birth it out when they need to give birth to the baby, or the baby is full term and you don't want to birth it out. You're scared, the fear, all these things that goes along with it. And then finally, you start to step into the promised land flowing with milk and honey as you have done the work. You completed the work. God has given you the assignment. You birthed it out. And that's when people begin to see like that full restoration recompense, that just everything that God promised, you start to really see the manifestation of promises when you start to step into that promised land. So that is the blueprint that God has given me. And so he uses that. I can spiritually see where people are. I can listen, or I can see that this person is in the wilderness. This person is here. This person's there. And I can help them navigate that season that they're in. And he uses me kind of like a GPS system. If people are on a journey or on a road trip and they get stuck or they get lost, and this is where he sends me in, like, all right, this person's stuck right here. I need you to see where they are. I need you to help them get out of it. So I'm kind of like a GPS system on this journey to the kingdom.
My God, come on now. GPS up in this thing, Google Maps.
I'm like, type in your where you trying to go, and then he pops me in like, hey, how you going? Where you going? Or where you think you're going? Yeah. And that's how it works.
I like that, Yahanna. Pruning season, wilderness season, crossover season, birthing season, promised land. I mean, if that's not a pilgrimage, I don't know what is.
And that's why it feels like that way when people are like, why do I have to go through all of this? Like, look at this journey, look at this walk. It's the reason why.
That is powerful. That is so powerful, Yahanna. When in the Journey to the Kingdom community, Yahanna, you talked about the process. How often do you meet with the ladies, and what is, I don't want to say typical, because everything you described, there's nothing typical about these calls. So if a woman that needs the help that you're offering, that God has graced you to provide, what could they expect on a Journey to the Kingdom call or cadence? What could they expect?
So it depends on where people are. It depends on the season. It depends on where they're meeting. So, a lot of people have told me, I have no idea how that even, I have no idea. But I'm like, the ladies call me the tour guide in the kingdom, where I'm just like, hey, how's it going? And I just pop in their life and they don't know where they met me. So it really just depends. So let's just say they're at the very beginning. They just gave their life to God. They're trying to step into this thing. They're trying to figure it out. For the most part, if I meet someone on this journey in the walk in the pruning season, there's a lot of work. They're usually with me for a very long time. And there's different capacities where they may need me. If they need to be equipped to go out and do what God, to become who God created them to be, that equipment is where God used to be on Clubhouse. So I'm here to equip people and encourage. I have a partner, Jasmine, who we work together on Clubhouse. And so equipping is where he has people go for me to really help them there. But then on Facebook, it's more prophetic words. So some people are in a right now season where you just need a right now word. Those are more so people may be birthing it. You just need more so prophetically for people who are birthing things out. And then I have prophetic consultations where it's typically people in the wilderness season. If you're lost, if you're confused, most people will come to me for a prophetic consultation when they're in the wilderness. They're trying to figure out, how do I get out of this wilderness? So God will send them to me for a prophetic consultation to help them get out of it. So it really just depends on where that person meets me. And because, God has had me created, I can usually say, well, I have a build your relationship with God online course. You should probably take this course because that'll help you in the foundation of everything that you need. Someone in the wilderness, here's a prophetic consultation. Someone who's giving birth, here's a membership program. You need community. You need someone to help you. So it's really hard to say because I'm just like this octopus. It's just like, okay, come over here, go here. You need to be over here. Go on my YouTube, go here. But again, in corporate, I learned organization, prioritization, community. I learned those skills that it's just easy. It's been sharpened, so I just use it now in what I do with Kingdom.
That's good. Listen, Yahanna, I'm a dude, and I'm getting excited about everything you're saying already. So I love it. My goodness. Well, Yahanna, you graced us with giving us your background and experiments. You shared your testimony so transparently. You've talked about what God is doing with the Journey to the Kingdom community. Yahanna, we're halfway through 2022, and I know the Lord ain't done by far. So what's upcoming? What do you have coming up next that you're excited about as we come into the second half of 2022?
For me, God has been speaking hubs to me. That's what he's been speaking to me, where it's going outside of online. Like I mentioned before, I've been online for so long. But I know that there's a shift that happens when I see people in person, or if I'm able to talk to them in person. He has been speaking hubs to me. So talking retreats later on down the line. But right now, people are curious of what's happening. It's really just helping people on this journey, just helping people on the walk. Every season that I mentioned is really already been starting to set up. So for me, it's not that anything that's on the horizon is more so retreats. But what we're doing right now is really just helping people build their relationship with God with the online course. Just different. And I don't know if you want me to go into that now or later, but that's basically what I've been working on and really building up to help people in all of these seasons that we mentioned.
Got it. Just a little bit of the teaser that you gave, Yahanna. I already know any kind of, I don't know what you'll call it, Journey to the Kingdom, retreat or whatever, but that is going to be lit if still just a little with the little bit of salt.
I gave you the short and so sweet version today just to condense it.
I like it, Yahanna. So event-wise, what about content? Is there any new courses, or maybe is there a book maybe that's on the horizon that you might be thinking about?
So I just updated my Build Your Relationship with God course. It's actually on my website. So if you go to journeytothekingdom.net, it's just been updated because I filmed it in the beginning. And I know God told me to film it, but new revelation, new wisdom, just experience. So before I filmed it from where I was at that point, because I've gone through this process and this journey, this pilgrimage, because I've gone through it, it's updated. So I recently just updated online course where it breaks down everything. My science project that I did where God gave me, like, I don't want to say formula, but to be able to hear God clearly, to be able to discover your purpose, to be able to grow in your relationship with God. That's what the most recent thing that I've been working on. So that's on my site. People can check that out. Prophetic consultations, wilderness season, if people are stuck, you feel lost, you feel confused, you don't know what to do. Really just people who feel stuck. If you feel stuck in life, feel stuck in your walk with God, you don't feel God's presence, that's the prophetic consultation that God has me doing. The membership program is where if you know God has given you a ministry, a business, a YouTube channel, like I mentioned before, to write a book, and you struggle with consistency, you struggle with accountability, you struggle with usually low self-esteem, because that's another area that I struggle with. Low self-esteem, you lack confidence because you need to be able to show up to do that. Most of the time, whether you're in person, you need to show up, you're called up online, social media, you're doing video interviews, you have to be able to show up and feel confident and comfortable in yourself. And so God uses me a lot with low self-esteem and lack of confidence as well. In the membership program, we really build the ladies up the same way we use on Journey to the Kingdom spiritually. That's where I help people grow in their spiritual walk. Birthing the Vision is the membership program. And that's where I help. God uses me to build people up to do what He's called them to do. So the membership program is another option that we really can just grow. That one is birthingthevision.com. It's got that's separate where it's spiritual, and then there's marketplace, ministry, business side. So He keeps it separate so that people, if you're looking for your spiritual walk, you come directly to Journey to the Kingdom. But if you're someone where God told you to do it, you've been sitting on it and you've been struggling to release it, and you just don't know why. That's where people need community. That's where they need a tribe. That's where they need me with the anointed for discipline to get it done and get it out of it, like really help them work it out. So it's two different sides of it.
Excellent. Well, folks, don't you worry. We're going to have links to everything that Yahanna is saying on our show notes. So if you're like, oh, what was that? Don't worry. We're going to have it up so you can take advantage of what she is offering. She was doing some powerful work, and I just wanted to plug Yahanna. I don't know when you're going to do it, but I'm telling you right now, whatever retreat that is that she's planning, that sounds like it's going to be good. So I'm not trying to sway anybody, but I'm just saying you probably, and this is where we'll get ready to wrap up, you may want to follow Yahanna and keep up with what she's doing so you can find out what God has her planning next. So Yahanna, you have been just so delightful here on this episode, being so transparent, talking about the impact that God has you making in the marketplace. How does everybody keep in touch with you? I know you mentioned the Journey to the Kingdom.net, I believe, but how do people find you on social media?
Yeah, so if we talk about hubs, my hub is Instagram, where it connects you to everything else. So they can start, so Instagram is my hub. And that is where people need to reach me anywhere. My link tree is there, and that can get them to Facebook, YouTube, everything. So I'm Journey with Yahanna on Instagram. And so YAHANA, Journey with Yahanna. You can follow me on Instagram and stay connected to everything that's going on.
Simple enough. It's the hub. It's the headquarters of Miss Yahanna Diemer. Well, Yahanna, this has been an excellent episode. I can promise you, whatever live event, whatever form it takes, Yahanna, we got to have you back on so you can tell us how awesome it is going. So, folks, you will. I think about the Avengers movies, Yahanna, where it says, Iron Man will return. Well, Yahanna Diemer will return to the Jericho Force podcast. I can tell you that much.
I'm excited. I had a great time. I know that I'm excited for the retreats and in person as well, because I know God is definitely going to show up. So people want to connect, you want to stay connected. And he gave me the slogan. He said that for Journey to the Kingdom is get connected, stay connected. Because a lot of people, the enemy comes and fights this ministry of God, as we expect. But he said that the enemy will come and try to get people to get connected, but then they start to slip away. But he said that it's get connected, stay connected. So just know, get connected, stay connected.
There it is, folks. Get connected, stay connected. Well, folks, that's all we have time for on this episode of the Jericho Force podcast. Major shout out to Miss Yahanna Diemer for all the gems that she dropped. You definitely want to go back and listen to this episode on your platform of choice, because it's going to give you some good things to think about. She's definitely very thought-provoking. So, Yahanna, I really appreciate having you on, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
Definitely. I'm excited.
All right. Well, everybody, you know how we leave things here on the Jericho Force podcast. Don't conform to the world's way of doing business. Transform by doing business God's way. We'll see you next time on the Jericho Force podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Jericho Force podcast. You can catch us live on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time and on demand. Check out jerichoforce.com/podcast for more details. To learn how to live out your faith in the marketplace, grab a copy of Jason Davis's book, Fortify, Being Rooted in God's Plan for Work and Business, available on Amazon.
You're listening to Jerry Live Worldwide Podcast.